For my birthday this year, all I wanted was nothing. Seriously. A day with my husband, Mark, a good book, maybe a slice of that incredible Black Forest cake from the little German bakery down the street. The kind with real whipped cream and a delicate dusting of cocoa that dissolves on your tongue. No fuss, no drama, no performative joy. I'm not a big birthday person. It's a fundamental part of my personality, a truth so ingrained it feels like my eye color or my blood type. I don't throw parties. I don't post dramatic selfies with a 34 and thriving caption. Honestly, most years I forget until Mark appears with a single, perfect bar of dark chocolate with sea salt and makes a dumb, endearing joke about being married to such a mature woman. That's always been more than enough for me. So what I got instead was a visit from the cops, 2 of them, standing on my own porch in the middle of a beautiful, sunny afternoon. It's a deeply weird thing, standing in your own doorway, watching 2 uniformed police officers stare at a plain brown cardboard box like it's a venomous snake coiled on your welcome mat. The box, my birthday gift, was just sitting there, an object of mundane, everyday shipping. And the craziest part, my husband, Mark, my incredible, saw it all coming husband, knew something was wrong the second it arrived. He didn't even have to touch it. He just took one long, hard look at that box, and the relaxed atmosphere of our quiet morning evaporated. He turned to me, his eyes dark with a seriousness that made my blood run cold, and said the 6 words that still echo in my mind, the words that signaled the end of my life as I knew it. Don't you dare touch that. To understand how a simple birthday gift ends with my own mother's name being dictated into a police report, to understand how it could unearth a betrayal that had been festering for years, we have to go back, not just to that morning, but way back, to the very root of a family so twisted it was bound to snap. And on my 34th birthday, it didn't just snap. It shattered into a million unrecognizable pieces. My whole any birthday thing didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was built, brick by painful brick, over 3 decades of bitter experience. As a kid, my birthday parties weren't really mine. They were elaborate stage productions for my mother, Catherine, to showcase her perfect house, her perfect catering, and her perfect family. I was just a prop in a frilly party dress, usually one that was a little too tight and itchy. The guest list? Her friends from the tennis club and their equally unimpressed children. The gifts? Impersonal, expensive things meant to impress the other parents, like porcelain dolls I was never allowed to play with or encyclopedias I was expected to read. And every single year, without fail, the spotlight would somehow pivot, as if by magnetic force, to my younger sister, Ellie. Ellie was, and still is, the golden child, the sun our entire family system orbited around, whether we liked it or not. She was prettier, more charming, more vivacious. At least, that was the story my mother wrote for us, and we were all expected to stick to the script. I remember one year, I won the regional spelling bee. My good grades got a distracted, "That's nice, dear," from my mother as she flipped through a magazine. That same week, Ellie brought home a report card with a C+ in art, and she was treated to a celebratory ice cream sundae because, as my mother declared, she tried so hard, bless her heart. My quiet hobbies, like reading and drawing, were deemed odd and isolating. Meanwhile, Ellie's fleeting interest in anything, ballet one month, soccer the next, flute the month after that, was met with a flood of expensive equipment and gushing praise. My mother's love always felt conditional, a transaction. You received it if you played your part. My role was clear, the serious, responsible, slightly dull older sister who, by contrast, made Ellie seem all the more dazzling. Her compliments were always double-edged, tiny darts wrapped in velvet. "That dress is lovely, Sarah," she'd say, her eyes scanning me critically. "So brave of you to wear that color." Or, after visiting my first apartment, "Your place is so cozy. It's wonderful that you don't need a lot of space to be happy." Each word was a precision strike, designed to keep me in my place, to remind me not to get too big for my britches. Consequently, my relationship with Ellie was a minefield, engineered by my mother to be that way. She didn't see my life as something I was carefully building for myself, but as a resource I was hoarding, something I had taken from her. The year I got a scholarship to a good university, she threw a monumental tantrum, accusing me of abandoning her, as if my education was a personal betrayal. At my wedding to Mark, a day I had desperately tried to protect as my own, She cornered me by the cake table and whispered, with a saccharine smile, that it wouldn't last. My quiet, stable life was a constant, silent judgment on her chaotic, drama-filled one. For years, she engaged in a campaign of petty sabotage, forgetting to pass on important phone messages, spreading rumors among our extended family, accidentally breaking things she borrowed. And my mom always defended her. "Oh, you know Ellie. She's just so forgetful." Or the timeless classic, "You're the older sister, Sarah. You should be more understanding." Then there was Mark, my husband, my rock. He was the first person who saw my family for what they were, not what they pretended to be. He didn't see a doting mother. He saw a classic narcissist and a master manipulator. He didn't see a free-spirited younger sister. He saw a pit of deep, consuming jealousy. When we first started dating, he came to a family dinner. He watched as my mother praised Ellie for burning the rolls, calling it a charming rustic effort, while simultaneously criticizing the bottle of wine I brought, noting that it was an interesting choice. Later that night, Mark just looked at me and said, "That wasn't a dinner. That was a psychological battlefield, and you're their primary target." He taught me about boundaries, a concept that was completely foreign in my family. He helped me find the strength to say no. He stood by me while I built a life that was actually mine, a life I loved. And for that, my mother and sister despised him. He was the enemy who had stolen their scapegoat. Which brings us to my 34th birthday. The calls started 2 weeks out, as predictable as the tide. My mom's voice on the phone, sounding like someone had injected syrup directly into her carotid artery. "Sarah, darling, we have to do something. A big dinner. I'll invite the cousins. We'll make it a real party." "No, thank you, Mom," I said, my voice impressively firm. It took years of practice with Mark to get it that steady. "Mark and I are just having a quiet day together." "Nonsense. A quiet day? On your birthday? It's barbaric. Let me just have a few people over to your place for a little cake and champagne." This negotiation, or rather, this siege, went on for 2 solid weeks. She deployed every weapon in her arsenal. Guilt trips, feigned concern, dramatic sighs. "I just don't understand why you insist on shutting us out," she'd lament. "It hurts my heart." Finally, seeing she was getting nowhere, she switched tactics. Fine. If you won't let me see you, at least let me send you something. Just a little something to show I'm thinking of you." I was exhausted, worn down to a nub. The constant defense, the bracing for the next call. It was draining. In that moment, agreeing felt like the path of least resistance. It felt like the smallest, most insignificant thing to agree to. "Fine, Mom," I sighed, and the word tasted like defeat. "Wonderful," she chirped, her voice instantly triumphant, like a general who had just won a key victory. I hung up the phone, a familiar sense of deep unease settling in my stomach. Mark walked into the room and saw it on my face immediately. "Your mother?" he asked. I just nodded. I agreed to let her send a gift. He didn't have to say anything. He didn't say "I told you so" or "Why would you do that?" He just gave me a long, knowing look that said, "Be on guard." He knew, better than I did, that a gift from my mother was never, ever just a gift. My birthday morning started out perfect, deceptively, cruelly peaceful. Mark, bless his heart, had woken up early to make me pancakes from scratch, the fluffy, buttermilk kind I love. We just sat in the sun-drenched living room, sipping coffee, reading our books. No phones, no television. It was blissfully, beautifully quiet. It was the exact day I had dreamed of. Then, around noon, the doorbell rang, a sharp, intrusive sound that shattered the calm. It was a courier, a young man who looked bored, holding a plain brown cardboard box. There was no ribbon, no glittery happy birthday balloon tied to it, nothing to indicate a celebration. Just a box, taped shut with an excessive amount of heavy-duty packing tape, as if it were prepared for a cross-country move by a robot. The shipping label was printed, not handwritten. The return address was just a P.O. box. I glanced at the town listed. It was a small town about an hour away, a place I knew my mother had no connection to whatsoever. A small, weird detail, but in the moment, I brushed it off as just another of her eccentricities. I took the box, thanked the courier, and grabbed a pair of scissors from the kitchen drawer, ready to just get it over with. Just as I was about to slice through the first layer of tape, Mark walked in from the garage. He stopped dead in the doorway. His whole posture shifted, from relaxed to rigid, like a wolf scenting danger. "Don't open it," he said, his voice low and urgent. Sarah, stop, don't. I let out a little nervous laugh. What's wrong? It's just the gift from my mom. Let's just see what passive-aggressive thing she sent this year and move on. No, he said, walking closer, his eyes scanning every inch of the box like a crime scene. Look at it. Really look. The tape. Nobody tapes a gift like this. It's sealed for shipping, not wrapped to be pretty. He carefully tilted it from side to side. And the weight is weird. It's not heavy exactly, but it's dense. Nothing shifts around inside. There's no rattle. He tapped a finger on the printed return address. And this is the biggest red flag of all. Your mother lives for taking credit. She would have handwritten the label in her perfect calligraphy and probably sprinkled it with glitter. A generic, untraceable P.O. box. She's hiding. His paranoia, so specific and detailed, started to feel contagious. That knot of unease in my stomach tightened into genuine dread. Mark, you think it's something bad? That's insane. It's my mother. Your mother, he said, his voice firm and unwavering, has been actively trying to cause problems in our marriage for 5 years. She sees our happiness as a personal insult. Why would your His face, grim and set, told me he knew I'd smelled it too. This isn't a gift, Sarah, he whispered, his voice barely audible. It's a trap. And just like that, everything clicked. It was like a key turning in a lock I didn't even know was there. All the little weird, disconnected things from the past few months suddenly snapped into a terrifyingly clear picture. A phone call from Ellie a few weeks ago. Her questions were so specific, so pointed. But at the time, I'd thought she was just being her usual nosy self. So, you're really just staying home for your birthday? Just you and Mark? You're absolutely sure? It wasn't curiosity. She was confirming our location, making sure we would be there to receive the package. A bizarre conversation with my mom about a month before. She had called me out of the blue to talk about one of her friend's daughters who had gotten into trouble, mentioning drug problems and the wrong crowd. It was so random then. Now, it felt like she was preemptively planting a narrative, setting a stage. And Ellie, just last week, bragging on the phone about her new boyfriend, Ricky. I remembered her exact words, and the weird, smug laugh that followed. He's very resourceful, she'd said. He can get things you wouldn't believe. The word resourceful echoed in my head with a sinister new meaning. The cloying smell, the anonymous P.O. box, Mark's immediate and shakable suspicion, Ellie's reconnaissance questions, my mother's planted stories. It wasn't random. It was a pattern. It was a goddamn conspiracy. The dread bloomed into full-blown, ice-cold terror. They weren't trying to send me a passive-aggressive gift. They were trying to ruin my life. I looked at Mark, my eyes wide, with a fear so profound I felt like I was falling. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just held my gaze, his own eyes filled with a fierce, protective anger that was almost frightening in its intensity. He was the one who finally gave voice to the thought that was screaming in my head. "We need to call the police," he said, his voice absolute. "Right now." For a split second, a lifetime of conditioning made me hesitate. Call the police on my own mother? My own sister? Over a birthday gift? It sounded like the plot of a terrible movie, but the cold, hard certainty in my gut was stronger than a lifetime of doubt. This was real. Mark carefully, as if handling unexploded ordnance, placed the box on the floor by the front door. I pulled out my phone, my hand shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. When the 911 operator answered, my voice was a strangled whisper I didn't even recognize as my own. I'd like to report a suspicious package. The 20 minutes we waited for the police to arrive were the longest, most agonizing of my life. The quiet I had so desperately wanted for my birthday was now a tense, suffocating stillness, thick with unspoken fear. Every creak of the house, every car that drove down the street, sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through me. When the two officers finally pulled up to the curb, I felt a bizarre, nauseating wave of both relief and profound shame. I opened the door, and the words just tumbled out of me in a panicked, incoherent stream. "It's my birthday. My mother sent a gift. But my husband, he thinks something is wrong with it. It smells strange. I know this sounds crazy." I was acutely aware that I sounded like I was losing my mind. The officers were calm, patient, their demeanor a stark contrast to my hysteria. I fully expected them to brush me off, to give me a patronizing pat on the arm and tell me not to worry. But they didn't. Officer Davies, a woman with kind eyes but a no-nonsense air, put on a pair of blue latex gloves. "You did the right thing by calling," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. "Let's take a look." She crouched down by the box on the welcome mat and sniffed cautiously near the tape. Her professionally neutral expression flickered for just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. She looked up at her partner and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. He understood immediately. "Ma'am, sir, we're not going to open this inside your home," he said, his tone shifting from placating to serious. "We're going to treat this as a potentially hazardous package and take it for analysis." The official terminology, the sheer professionalism of it all, was both terrifying and deeply validating. This was real. This was serious. They carefully placed my birthday gift into a large, sealed evidence bag and walked back to their patrol car. The hours that followed were a blur of anxious waiting. Mark and I just sat in the living room, the half-read books forgotten. Finally, around 6 p.m., my phone rang, displaying an unknown number. It was Officer Davies. "Mrs. Miller?" Her tone was grave, all business. "I wanted to let you know that you and your husband absolutely did the right thing. Our lab analyzed the contents of the package. The box contained just over 500 grams of cocaine, packed inside several decorative bath salt containers. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. I physically sagged on the couch. Cocaine. My mother had mailed a felony amount of cocaine to my front door. But it got worse. There was also a handwritten note inside," she continued, her voice flat. It said, "Here's that little pick-me-up I told you about. Hope it helps you enjoy the party. And Mrs. Miller, there's something else you need to know. We received an anonymous tip earlier today. Around p.m. a woman called in to report suspected drug activity at your address, specifically mentioning that a suspicious package was due to arrive today." The pieces didn't just click into place. They slammed together with the force of a car crash. They hadn't just sent it. They had sent it and then called the cops on me themselves. They had gift-wrapped a federal crime, mailed it to my house, and then set a timer with the police. They wanted me arrested, disgraced, ruined. "Do you have any idea who might have done this to you?" the officer asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. My voice was a thread, thin and brittle. "My mother, Catherine Miller, and my sister, Ellie Miller." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Thank you for confirming, Mrs. Miller. That aligns with our preliminary findings. We traced the P.O. box on the return label. It was rented 2 weeks ago by an Ellie Miller. It was a staggering combination of pure evil and breathtaking incompetence. They had built this elaborate, life-destroying trap and then left their names all over the blueprints." Then, Officer Davies asked a question that made my blood run cold. "It's highly likely they'll call you at some point to see if their plan worked. If they do, would you be willing to let us listen in?" Before I could even process the question, my phone buzzed with another incoming call. Caller ID flashed on the screen. Mom. The timing was so perfect, so diabolical, it felt scripted by the devil himself. With Officer Davies still silently on the other line, I took a ragged breath, looked at Mark, whose face was a mask of cold fury, and I answered the call on speakerphone. "Sarah, darling." My mother's voice was a song of sickeningly fake cheer. "Happy birthday. Did you get my little surprise?" I forced the words out, my own voice sounding alien and hollow. "Mom, I got it. Wonderful," she cooed, the glee in her voice unmistakable. "Ellie helped me pick it out. We were just talking, and we thought you sounded so dreadfully bored with your quiet little life. We wanted to make your birthday a little more exciting." I could hear Ellie laugh shrilly in the background. She grabbed the phone from my mother. "Yeah, Sarah, a little party favor. Bet you're having a real blast right now, huh? Things finally getting interesting over there?" Their arrogance, their gloating, their absolute certainty that they had won. It was all there, recorded in crystal clear audio for a police officer to hear. Their own venom was their undoing. The line went silent after they hung up, pleased with themselves. Then, Officer Davies' voice came back, crisp and clear and cold as steel. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller. I think we have everything we need." The rest of that evening was a whirlwind. The police department moved with a speed that was both shocking and deeply validating. Detectives came to our house, took formal statements. We sat at our dining room table and told them everything. The years of emotional abuse, the jealousy, Ellie's shady new resourceful boyfriend, the strange reconnaissance phone calls, the planted stories. We gave them our phones, and they downloaded the call logs and text messages. They had the P.O. box rental agreement in Ellie's name. And now, they had a recorded, gloating confession. Later that night, armed with warrants, they raided my mother's house and my sister's apartment. They found more than enough corroborating evidence, texts between them, planning the whole sick affair in detail. She'll never see it coming. One of Ellie's texts read, "She's too trusting. They found financial records showing a large cash withdrawal from my mom's account a few days before my birthday. The same day Ellie's boyfriend, the supplier, made a large deposit. He was arrested too, and in a bid for leniency, he told them everything. I never spoke to my mother or my sister again. All communication from that point forward was through lawyers. Theirs tried to spin a ridiculous story about them being manipulated by the boyfriend, that it was all a terrible misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. That gleeful phone call, dripping with their malicious delight, completely destroyed their defense. The legal battle dragged on for over a year. It was a hellish marathon of depositions and hearings, and having to sit in sterile rooms with these two women who shared my blood, who now refused to even look at me. They just stared ahead, their faces hard masks of indignation, as if they were the victims in all of this. In the end, the system worked. The evidence was too strong, the intent too clear. Ellie, who procured and packaged the drugs, was convicted of conspiracy and drug trafficking. She got 10 years. My mother, who financed the operation and made the anonymous tip to the police, got 7. In his closing remarks, the judge called their actions a chilling betrayal of familial trust, born of a malice that is as baffling as it is profound. Looking back, my life with them was like living in a house with a slow, constant gas leak. For years, I felt sick and dizzy and confused, always telling myself I was just being overly sensitive, that it was all in my head. That birthday gift wasn't the fire. It was simply the match that finally ignited the fumes that had been collecting for 30 years. It was a brutal, horrifying education. It taught me that my darkest fears about my family weren't fears. They were instincts. Their love was a performance, and I was just an audience of one. They had grown tired of my happiness, my peace, my life with Mark. It was a threat to their miserable, drama-fueled narrative, and they were more than willing to burn my entire life to the ground just to feel the warmth of the flames. But that day, and the horrific fallout, also gave me a real gift. It gave me the undeniable, irrefutable proof of my husband's love and loyalty. He saw the danger when I was still blinded by a desperate, lingering hope for a family I never truly had. Our bond, which was already strong, was forged in that fire into something unbreakable. A few months after the sentencing, we sold our house. We packed up our lives and moved 3 states away, to a place where no one knew our story. We have a small home with a big garden on a quiet, tree-lined street. I finally have the quiet life I always wanted. A peace I had to walk through hell to find. A peace that I will never ever take for granted. That day taught me that